Hello, my name is Stephanie Achonye, and in this video, I'll be comparing Virginia and Hispaniola and their early relations with the Native Americans. Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer, navigator, and colonizer. He landed on the island of Hispaniola in 1492, where he met the natives. Since the first landing of Christopher Columbus, Native Americans were grossly mistreated, with many of them being enslaved, forced to convert to Christianity, or murdered. Queen Isabella of Spain had actually decreed that the natives were to be morally equal to all her other subjects, including the Spaniards themselves. They were to be treated humanely and not to be enslaved, and they were to be Christianized and Europeanized. Christopher Columbus, against the orders of Queen Isabella, enslaved 500 natives and sent them to Spain. When Queen Isabella heard of this, she said the slaves were to be freed and sent back to Hispaniola. The natives were constantly brutalized. When some rebelled, they were either killed or captured as prisoners of war and then enslaved. Each native was required to bring the Spanish a certain amount of gold every 90 days. Failing to do so resulted in execution. This brutal treatment of Native Americans extended to other territories, like Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Jamaica. The natives virtually disappeared from these areas, as most were either murdered or killed by the bacteria of European diseases, of which they had no biological immunity. The pattern established in the 16th century was essentially repeated again and again throughout the 300 years of the Spanish colonial period. One major feature of this policy was that it brought the whites and Indians together. The English did not establish permanent settlements in the New World until more than a century after the Spaniards. The first two were Jamestown, Virginia in 1607 and Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. In both cases, the Englishmen faced a problem that the Spaniards also encountered a century later. They had to determine how to evaluate the natives and how to deal with them. We're going to move on to the English and the colonization of Jamestown. In 1607, a ship filled with people from England landed on the coast of the land we now call Virginia. John Smith was one of the many men who settled in Jamestown and tried to make it a thriving settlement. They had a rocky yet steady relationship with the Native Americans in the area. The Native American Indians regarded the newcomers with a mixture of brotherly kindness and eagerness to make contact with the outside world. This, however, was countered by hostility based on the fear that the colonists were out to seize their land. Initially, the settlers were met with hostility from the Native Americans because the natives knew nothing about them except that they were trying to settle on their land. They attacked one of the ships before the English actually landed, but soon after the Indians soon began to offer food like bread, meats, fish, and corn to save the starving infant colony. It wasn't a surprise that the natives and the settlers did not get along at first. They had many differences. For one, the natives lived closely off the land and had a very spiritual connection to it, and respected it and the animals. The settlers, however, saw the natives as savages because they wore no clothing and had many different beliefs than the settlers. After a while of realizing that the settlers were not leaving, the natives started to be a little more hospitable. The colonists searched for instant wealth, so they neglected planting corn and other work. Therefore, they grew more and more dependent on the Indians for food. The natives started teaching the settlers what to plant and how to fish and live off the land. They soon realized, however, that trade would become the common ground for the two parties. The natives would trade food and fur with the settlers in exchange for guns and other European products. Unfortunately for the Indians, John Smith believed that the English should treat Indians as the Spanish had, to have them working like slaves. So when his negotiations with Indians for food occasionally failed, Smith took what he wanted by force. It did not take long for the Native Americans to grow restless with the settlers. The English did not return their hospitality, so the Indians began attacking settlers, killing their livestock and burning crops as they planted. The settlers fought back with raids on native villages and not only destroyed them but killed the natives as well. This soon led to a long and tiresome battle between the natives and the settlers that would last for many decades to come. Although the English lived in proximity to the Indians for some years, it soon ended. Both the Spaniards and British sought to enslave Indians, the British without much success. The most important difference, however, was the absence of intermarriage with the Spaniards. And this concludes my comparison of treatment of Native Americans, Spain versus England.